Hello and welcome to this webinar provided by the International Fire Stop Council. My name is Brent Johnson with Firewise Consultants, and today this webinar will be covering how to read listings for recessed membrane boxes and protection. So most commonly, many people think about an electrical box in a rated wall. In this overview, we will cover that, but also make you aware that there are numerous types of boxes that can be membrane penetrations, and there are protective listed systems that will help you maintain the rating of those. We will also cover a couple common misconceptions that might go within that. So the main focus today is what listed systems look like for membrane protection boxes or boxes and membrane penetrations, and how to read through them, how much information may be found in them, how I install and inspect to them as well. So first off, most commonly we see in the field is that we see on the screen here is, hey, I got an electrical box that is protected by a fire pad. I hear a lot of times it's just smack fire pads on everything. I'm going to pad every single box in this building, rated or non-rated walls. It has to maintain the fire protection required by code. Well, unfortunately, a fire pad, just like any other fire stopping product, has a listed system to back and prove that it meets the code requirements of your rated assembly. So just by having a fire stop putty pad or box insert or wrap or a sheetrock even around these membrane penetrations does not mean it always maintains the rating. So a couple key things I like to show is this is a very common installation, and as construction advances we see more and more prefabrication of boxes and elements done ahead of or off-site. So as you can see in the photo here, we have mounting brackets that bridge the studs left to right, and other elements that might support our boxes that might interact or get in the way with the putty pad. So all great questions that we have to ask to say, it looks like a pretty clean installation, but is it compliant? How do I inspect it? What does the paperwork show? Also, we're trying to show a couple different things we're going to walk through to not only look at the box itself or the membrane penetration, but all the surrounding elements, how things connect, the depth of box, the width of box, the height of the box, any sort of mounting bracket that gets in the way of the pad. Where does this conduit or MC cable even go? Does it connect to another box? Is there another box within the back side of it blocking access for the pad to be installed? So there's much more than just looking at the product itself. As we remember, the fire stopping product never holds the rating, the listed system does. So a common fire stop system that you may hear out there is called CLIV, and on the screen you're going to see a copy of one manufacturer's CLIV system that there are multiple manufacturers that have this. This is a common starting point for us, and our main focus of today's webinar is how to read through a box membrane penetrations system. CLIV is one of the most common ones because it covers outlet box protection. Now there could be med gas boxes, electrical panels, other types of outlets and elements in a rated wall that have different systems. CLIV is the category code only for protective elements of outlet boxes. So those other systems we will touch upon shortly, but let's focus on this one. In this case, this is CLIV.R9700. So R970 is actually the specific listing number of this manufacturer. So there will be a different R number behind the CLIV for different manufacturers. Below that, we will get some common information, and it is unfortunately like other systems that we commonly see, there's always a drawing or some sort of sketch that will give us a generic overview of the condition. We never inspect or install only to that drawing. In this case, the words always trump the drawing, but in these CLIV systems, we have no drawing at all. It's just a whole bunch of words. So not the most exciting topic, but it shows you that there are UL systems without drawings. So within the CLIV, it's going to give us some parameters as far as maybe how to install the pad, generically speaking, how to deal with overlaps or seams of the product, what to do with back-to-back boxes or interconnected boxes, and then the size and elements of the construction that is allowed. Each manufacturer's CLIV listing is different than others, This one we have on the page is a little bit more generic than some of the other ones. So where we're going with that is you may be required, as far as installation and inspection goes, to also include your product data sheets and installation instructions along with your CLIV to help you understand how the product's supposed to be applied. And that's something that we'll probably see from reading through this, that it doesn't even tell me how to put the pad or product on the box, how it overlaps, how it adheres. So right away, I'm already seeing that a installation instruction or product data sheet may have to help aid me in my installation or inspection of this product. But let's take a common condition like we had above and say, okay, Brent, I got a common box here, my messy drawings, but let's say the box itself is 4 11/16 wide by 4 11/16 tall by, let's see, I actually have a measurement on the photo here, 3.5 inch deep. That's a pretty deep box. It doesn't look out of the ordinary, but let's say it's a 4 11/16 square box, very common. In this case, it's 3.5 inch deep. Well, Brent, most of the responses we get is, it's just a 4 11/16 box. Why would I care about the depth of the box? Well, what I always like to do is just read through the listed system that's been submitted to me or selected and understand what information may be found in that. So right away at the top of the page, see right away, hey, this type of putty pad in this case is allowed for on a max 4 11/16 box, which I just said I had, by 2.1/8 inch deep. So the depth is actually called out in the listed system. So right away, I already have a minus saying this system not working right away. So as I scroll down, you can see the depth is called out in every single condition. And I don't hit a deeper than 2.5 inch box till I get to here. But now it's not a 4 11/16 box. It's even smaller than 4 square. And the catch is it will even break out metallic versus non-metallic conditions. So this system in this Firestop putty pad allows metallic boxes and non-metallic boxes, but you can see the size of the box is the first defining measure. It even allows a max 14 inch wide box. So that's quite a large box. So it doesn't have to be a single gang box. We could have multiple gang boxes per the listed system acceptable. But as I scroll down the page, I'm not seeing 3.5 inches deep. So it looks like we struck out. This is only a one-page document, and I don't have a listed system with that specific pad for this specific depth of box. So right away, I struck out with this system. I might have to find others, but I'm trying to show that the height, width, and depth is commonly called out in these listed systems. Not always, but in this specific one that was handed to me, looks like that's what's going. So let's say we had a 2.1/8 deep box. Let's just say that's okay. What else can be found in a listed system for CLIV or outlet box protection in the membrane? It talks about that if it's a metallic or a non-metallic box. It even talks about if it's UL listed, and we'll kind of circle back around on that, but it's a specific box, metal box, installed with steel cover plates. Well, let's think about that for a second. That means that when this box is finished, the sheetrock's going to go on it, and they're going to put a cover plate, so the finished piece that we see around our outlet switch, it has to be steel. So the finishes, which many times the Firestop installer or inspector never get to see, is clearly called out on the listed system. So if I have a plastic faceplate or cover guard here to finish this wall off for my switch or outlets, I would have a non-compliant Firestop system. So taking that into consideration, even if you're not on the project, is going to play out to be an imperative step and question to ask, hopefully in pre-construction, pre-installation, to make sure this document allows the cover plate that the contractor or owner would like to see. It also talks about use in 1 or 2 hour fire-rated gypsum board wall assembly. So commonly 1 and 2 hours. So if I had a 3 or 4 hour wall, we're going to have some problems. I don't believe that there are listed systems for that, but again, we are sticking with a 1 and 2 hour wall. Then it even tells me a minimum 3.5 inch wide wood or steel stud. So please remember, now that means the depth of stud has to also be measured. So what's not shown in my photo here, and I'm sure I have one coming up, is not only am I measuring the box size, but I'm also measuring how deep that stud cavity is. So I know you can't really see it below, but there should be a stud within the wall, metal or wood, that we're going to have to also understand how deep that is. So usually a 3 5/8 stud is common. You might see 6 inches. But every once in a while, we do see 2.5-inch stud walls, especially with shaft walls. So take that into consideration, that the depth of stud also has to be checked off when you're doing your inspection or selection of systems. Then it will say, hey, it could be in a 1 and 2 hour wall, 3.5-inch deep minimum wide wood or metal studs, and you can build it per any U300, U400, or V400 series wall or partition design. So there are hundreds of different listed systems tested in accordance with ASTM E119 and UL 2063, which is the test standard for the wall. So that's basically saying someone else needs to build the wall right per those listed systems for 1 and 2 hours. You can protect the outlet box or the membrane box penetration within that wall as long as these additional parameters are met. So I always do get the question, well, hold on, Brent, my U415 shaft wall design is a 2 hour shaft wall. It allows a 2.5-inch stud for 2 hour protection. That's okay. I can use this putty pad per this system in that wall assembly. My answer would be, please check with your authority having jurisdiction. But based on this verbiage here, it says the word minimum 3.5-inch stud. So I have to go with the most stringent design. In this case, yes, this product is used and allowed in a U415 2 hour shaft wall potentially, but it has to have a minimum 3.5-inch shaft wall stud or CH stud. So please check off again, as a Firestop installer or inspector, you're probably not checking or being provided the information about the wall construction, the framing, what wall design is used, what cover plate's being used. So you can see those elements are all in there. If we keep going through, we see there's other sections of different types of boxes being allowed. Now this one says minimum 5.5-inch stud. So we made even a deeper stud, but look, now it allows a plastic cover plate. So, hey, that helps. That's what we want to use is plastic, but I have to have a deeper stud. That could cause a problem. It also provides some additional clarification that steel attachment brackets, which offset the box a minimum 1/4 inch of the stud. So, okay, great. My box is attached directly to the stud or even slightly offset. Now that's clearly called out in the system here. It's acceptable. If it wasn't called out, I got to raise the question and ask, are you sure it's allowed for this specific configuration? It then talks about putty pad to be affixed to the back of all 4 sides of the box. Boxes may be installed back to back within stud cavity. When back-to-back boxes are interconnected, another key term to remember here, a ball of putty is to be installed and plugged into the open end of each EMT or conduit. So again, we're breaking, each paragraph is a different installation that you can select from. Let's say we had a plastic cover plate, a 4 11/16 box. It's saying that's okay in a 1 and 2 hour wall as long as we're minimum 5.5-inch deep stud. The next 2 items I want to make sure you're aware of is I get this question again. If it's a rated wall, I should be able to use my pad everywhere. Well, the layout and orientation of your boxes is clearly called out in this system and needs to be verified by the contractor. So 2 things to worry about. It said the word, sure, boxes can be back to back. And my photo here is showing 2 boxes facing opposite directions is what we would define as back to back. Your authority having jurisdiction will have to verify, do they have to be offset or directly back to back? Can't help you with that. That would have to be defined by them, but the photo shows directly back to back. My listed system with these putty pad installation needs to show and comment that back to back is acceptable. Additionally, if I look on the left, this is what we call interconnected, where one pad goes to another, one box is connected directly to another box. So you can see this MC cable goes from one box to the other box and they're facing opposite sides of the wall. That would be interconnected. And what that's saying is when that occurs, they want a little ball of putty inside this MC or EMT cable, or this connection point. So you're having to go in through the face of the box and apply putty. That's something that we rarely see, but was clearly defined here in this listed system. Now, I'm not saying there's not another solution out there, but you have to remember that the CLIV system in this case has a lot of information that we're having to check those boxes off. As we move further ahead in the system for other configurations, we talked about up to a 14-inch wide box may be acceptable. This is even for a non-metallic box. Well, hold on, Brent. I have a UL listed 2-hour rated box. It doesn't need any fire pad. Well, what we're not talking about today is what the code allows. There are exceptions when we don't have to fire pad, potentially to protect membrane penetrations altogether. But if they are required, if the code does require us to protect the specific box, that's where this system may come into play. Additionally, there are plenty of listed designs, as I jump ahead here, or assemblies that may allow you to not protect the box altogether. And what I'm trying to say is those non-metallic boxes are what we call CEYY, or is a category code example of other listed non-metallic boxes that may not require protection altogether with an additional fire stopping product. So what we're trying to say is that there are membrane penetration boxes or outlet boxes that may not require protection by code. Additionally, there are non-metallic boxes potentially that require no protection as well. What I'm trying to show you here is that there are additional category codes within the UL directory that list those non-metallic boxes. They also provide additional installation requirements that shall be followed. So as a recap, CEYY is an example of a category code that UL provides for non-metallic boxes that are listed at UL. It has, in this case, this is Allied, so it has hundreds of different types of boxes that they make that may or may not be allowed without protection. What I'm trying to show you is just because the box has a UL logo on it with a 2-hour rating symbol on it doesn't mean it has a specific installation that shall be followed. So this UL system that I have in front of me clearly says if I'm using one of these part numbers, let's say I'm just randomly picking a line, it says it can be in a 1 and 2 hour wall. It gives me a stud depth. It even talks about clearance between boxes and cutouts, the dimensions around that. It also talks about the area of openings for box shall not be more than 100 square inches and 100 square feet of wall, and no opening shall exceed 22 square inches. So it gives me specific parameters of how these boxes shall be spaced, staggered, and we can go on for hours on these elements. All I'm trying to say is just because my box has a UL logo and rating, 2-hour rating or 1-hour rating on it, doesn't mean it's always acceptable. That would cover poke throughs and other elements. And as you can see a little bit further down here, sometimes specific boxes will say, hey, you got to put a fire pad on that. So as you can see, it talks about putty pad right here. So again, they're not always as straightforward as many people would like to accept is what we're trying to show. And CEYY is an example of a category code that can help you clarify that if you're ever concerned about when a non-metallic box is acceptable without a pad. Additionally, there are other elements, systems that you will find in the industry. Like in this case, we have a WL, remember a sheetrock metal sheetrock framed assembly, and 7000 series mean miscellaneous penetration going on here for electrical box protection. So this is a box membrane penetration in a rated wall, and it shows how to protect that specific steel 19 by 32 inch by 3.5 inch deep max box. So this would be an electrical panel, and it's not so much using a putty pad in this case, it's using a matte type product with fire stopping sealant. So there are multiple systems out there. CLIV only covers outlet box protection. This is an example if I have a med gas box, electrical panel, some sort of outlets, things like that that are not electrical based. There might be other listed systems for that membrane protection. It even lists the test standard that we see in the code and learn about in other reading literature that the International Fire Stop Council may have for us. So let's go back finally and recap the CLIV system. It talks about a lot of parameters as far as box height, width, and depth. Talks about stud depth, stud type, faceplate type, plastic or metal. It talks about when boxes are back to back. If it's allowed, it must be clearly defined in the section, as we saw in that one area. Here it did call it out. And if they're interconnected, again, they have to be clearly called out in the CLIV system that it can be interconnected because additional material may be required. So if you go to the bottom of this system, we can actually see here in the last paragraph, it does talk about some of those basic installation requirements. completely cover the exterior surfaces of the outlet box. And step one is up against a stud. It talks about a minimum depth of the material. The putty pad comes in a prefabbed or preset thickness. We don't want to be stretching them to get around a box. This may say multiple pads are allowed, so don't stretch them. Let's just use multiple pads as long as we maintain that minimum thickness. It also talks about when we have a connection point, additional material may be required. And it talks about a couple different steps of installation here. So the last sentence I like to show is that provided the outlet boxes are not installed back-to-back as noted. So again, I have to stress that we can only allow back-to-back boxes when the system calls it out. So a couple other things to remember, this system didn't talk about a box guard or a cover guard or a box insert. So there are other means and methods like we talked about that can protect an outlet box. But please remember, the FireStop system will identify where these types of products can be used. Not saying this is a correct installation, but this system didn't call out that specific product, and no product holds the rating. So even these fancy prefabricated devices have their own listed system. So in this case, please remember the depth of box is very important, because that intumescent box sensor is going to expand outward towards the faceplate. So the faceplate type and box depth is going to have to be focused on as well. We talked about that there's numerous types of listed systems for all different conditions that are membrane penetrations, that are box related. And then also, here's a couple examples of other membrane penetration box protections that you may see. We see more of an endothermic wrap or wrap type material around larger panel elements where a putty pad could not work. Listed system for that. We see 5-sided sheetrock. I always like to show this because many people see where we use 5-sided box. The putty pad didn't work. Well, we still need to get our authority having jurisdiction to verify that acceptance, how to treat the penetration through that box. So as an inspector installer, please remember, even if we 5-sided an element with sheetrock, we still need to verify if that's compliant by our authority having jurisdiction and how to treat those penetrations through it. Just like we have to verify how to treat the penetration through the wrap type material here that we see in the photo, which has not yet been done. So just because it looks pretty doesn't mean it was code compliant. So with that, I want to thank everyone for taking the time and going through this webinar. I want to make sure you're aware that at firestop.org, there is a full series of these webinars covering multiple types of penetrations, joints, perimeter containment, and today with the membrane box protection. So take a look at that. That is a free series that is provided along with additional reading literature. And with that, myself, Brent Johnson at FireWise Consultants and the International FireStop Council would like thank you for taking the time. And feel free to reach out to us both with the websites and contact information below if you have further questions. I would love to speak to you. So have a great day. Thank you.